Hi, I'm Randy Corrigan, General Manager, Secretary Treasurer, Teamsters, Local 1932. We're taking a few minutes to talk about a couple things that are extremely important right now. You may have seen a lot of things going on in the press, as well as current bills that are being presented not only through Congress, but at state level across the country. Behind me, you see a screen that's rolling union density between 1964 and today. And you can see actually how over time union density has shrunk across the country. Right to work means right to work for less. Statistics show, absolutely rock solid, and the statistics just recently came out, that if you work in a right to work state, that you're going to earn 22% less than somebody that works in a non-right to work state. California is currently a non-right to work state. However, just a couple days ago, Congress has already floated an idea, and they're floating a bill to try to create national right to work, and it actually applies across the entire country, regardless of what California decides or any individual decides. And so how does all this impact you? How does all this impact workers? Well, here's how I'm going to lay it out. The crazy thing that's happened right here in the Inland Empire, and for those of you that have seen the hundreds of thousands of jobs that have come into the Inland Empire in the last 30 years, you see all these warehouses and these tilt-ups around here. The vast majority of those were built off of redevelopment funds, off of tax breaks, incentives, and billions of dollars were taken out of this local economy. And then when things got tight, they tried to blame you. They tried to blame me. They tried to blame us. And they want to cut our pension. They want to cut our health and welfare. They want to cut our services. They want to cut how much money we make, when no one's paying attention to the billions of dollars that have been taken out of the local economy by corporate America. Well, what we want to identify right now, what we got to get everybody to understand, is that while all this argument is going on nationally, while all the politics and people are bickering, while all the fighting is going on, super wealthy corporate interests are trying to pass laws right underneath our nose as we're caught up in this confrontation, as we're caught up in this fight. And we don't want to lose sight on what's really going on. And when organizations like ALEC, organizations like that, super wealthy, that have an agenda and they're trying to pass an agenda against working people, we need to make you aware of that. So let's take a minute and let's look at this map. Let's take it and let's stop it. It started in 1964. If you look in the 60s, that's good enough. If you look in the 60s, you see union density in these dark colors in lots of areas. And there's only a few of them that have light colors. The problem that you have that's gone on is, as you've seen this map loop, is you see it starting to lighten up. And so this is at a time when 36% of America was under a union contract, and collective bargaining was really widespread, and everybody for the most part had a voice. And obviously unions, just as in the state of California, when in the mid-90s we brought the overtime after 8 back, we're the ones that did it. Unions did. Union people did. Every other Californian benefited from getting overtime after 8 because we brought that law back into place. Well, you pile up all those laws over our entire career, over the last 50 years, and everything that's been been put in place to protect workers. Well, it's been unions that have been at the forefront. Union workers like yourself that have been at the forefront trying to pass those laws. Make sure that legislation goes through to not only protect union workers, but also protect non-union workers, and make sure that the economic base of this country is stable. The economic base of a region is stable. And when too much money is taken out, guess what? It can't stay stable, and then you don't have a good tax base. And at the end of the day, then public sector workers lose. There is no difference between public sector and private sector, other than your title. We're in this together. We're all working people. And we're not going to get caught up into this division between, well, that's them, that's federal employees, well, that's private sector. The reality is, any attack on working people, any change to collective bargaining rights for working people, we all must recognize that that's an attack on all of us. So look at 1968, how much union density was across the entire country. Now let's fast forward it to the 80s. Now we look at 1980. You see the Rust Belt is still in the high 20s in percentages. A lot of manufacturing jobs are still there at this point. All those manufacturing jobs were lured away in this area down into the South and a number of other areas that are right-to-work states in the 80s. And what those areas did and what those businesses did is they tried to tell their local individual people, oh, guess what? We're bringing jobs to our area. Well, they weren't bringing new jobs. They were displacing jobs from a different area. Let's go into the 2000s. Now that we advance ourselves into the 2000s, we see the onslaught of permanent normal trade relations with China. We see all these trade deals coming about. And these big business interests now, after those come into place, take all the jobs and actually ship them out of the country. And so once again, we have a situation where big business interests are trying to argue and trying to tell us today that they're looking out for us. Well, I'm sorry, but over the last 50 years, the vast majority of them, and I can't say all of them, but the vast majority of them have not really looked out for working people. As a matter of fact, what they've done is they've just moved the ball around a little bit. We haven't paid attention to what's really happened. They've taken a tremendous amount of tax money out of the economy, out of local economies, the national economy, and out of our federal reserves. And then on top of it, turned around and tried to blame us that somehow we're the problem. For those of you that don't know, there was a time in this country when the vast majority of Americans had a pension. There was a vast majority of the Americans, almost all Americans, when they went to work, they had health care provided. That's not the case today. And if you back this back up, we're not going to back it up, but if you backed it up to 1964, when there was union density across the country, that wasn't a problem. As a matter of fact, most households were a single income household. Today, almost all households are a dual income household, and most people don't actually have a pension anymore. And those that do, there's currently legislation to try to attack it. We're trying to bring a message that it's time to wake up. It's time to realize who the real villains are. It's not public sector workers. And when you listen to the radio and you hear people attack you, don't listen to that. Enough's enough. Don't fall in that trap. It's not federal employees. It's you. And if they're going to do it to federal employees and they're going to take collective bargaining rights away from federal employees, then that means they're going to take them away from you. And they're going to take them away from anybody else that has a good job. Because if you take away collective bargaining rights, the pension in which you try to retire on, the health and welfare or the medical benefits in which you try to maintain, the job securities in which you have, the safety on the job, and everything about your working conditions, you no longer have a voice in them. And if you cannot collectively bargain, that means there's nobody to represent you, and you're left at the discretion of those that decided. A handful of very wealthy people that have been controlling this for the last 50 years. This representation really shows, and this is factual, this is not foolery. No one's trying to sell anything. This is exactly what has happened over the last 50 years. Pay attention. You're going to see on the website, you're going to see on Facebook, we're going to start pumping out facts, not political rhetoric, not arguments over who's the president or who shouldn't be. Facts over what's going to affect you. And we're going to want you to call your congressman, we want you to call your senator, we're going to want you to call your city council person, your board of supervisors. We want you to call even your school board representatives. And we need to get our members and all of the working people to rise up and say, you know what, we've had enough. We're tired of everybody taking from us. And at the end of the day, we want to have a strong voice. Thank you.